Have you ever felt like something in your life is about to shift, but you can't explain why? Like there's a quiet hum beneath your daily routine, something invisible pulling at you, telling you that change is coming? You can't see it, you can't name it, but deep down, you feel it. It's not anxiety, it's not restlessness, it's a signal, a whisper from the part of you that's been waiting silently for a better chapter to begin. You're not imagining it, you're not overthinking. You're standing on the edge of something extraordinary, and life is giving you signs, subtle but powerful, that transformation's already on its way. Sometimes, right before everything gets better, everything starts to feel different. Not worse, just different. You start noticing the small things more. You feel a shift in your energy, your thoughts, even your sleep. The conversations around you don't hit the same. The things you used to tolerate suddenly become heavy. You're not falling apart. You're waking up. You're outgrowing what no longer serves you. And that discomfort? That's not a problem. It's proof. Proof that the version of you that's been buried under expectation and routine is starting to breathe again. This isn't some grand dramatic moment. It's quieter than that. It's a nudge, a whisper, a tap on the shoulder from the future you've secretly hoped for but weren't sure you deserved. But here's the truth. You do deserve it. You've always deserved more than survival. You were born to thrive. You were made for growth. And right now, something inside you is choosing to rise, even if your circumstances haven't caught up yet. So many people miss these moments. They think they're just in a funk or having a rough week. But what they're really experiencing is the beginning of alignment, the beginning of real change. And the people who recognize it, who lean into it, who trust it, they're the ones who emerge stronger, clearer, and freer on the other side. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't need a perfect plan. All you need is the courage to listen, to trust that what you're feeling is not only real, it's leading you somewhere better. Stay with me, because over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the 7 clear signs that your life is about to change for the better. And once you recognize these signs in your own story, you'll see the path ahead with new eyes. You'll stop doubting the discomfort. You'll stop fighting the unknown. And instead, you'll start stepping boldly into the transformation that's already unfolding. You've been waiting for change. You've been hoping for more. And now, without even realizing it, you're standing at the doorway. This is your moment. Let's walk through it, together. Something begins to shift when the places that once felt like home start to feel too small. You walk into rooms that used to comfort you, but now they feel heavy. You talk to people you used to laugh with, and now there's silence between your words. It's not because something's wrong with you, it's because something's right. You're evolving. What once aligned with you no longer fits your frequency. You're not falling apart. You're growing beyond the life you settled for. And that discomfort you feel, it's sacred. It's the signal that your spirit is moving into a higher place, even if your reality hasn't caught up yet. This feeling doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means your soul is tired of playing small. It means you've outgrown conversations that stay on the surface, outgrown habits that drain instead of build, outgrown spaces that keep you boxed in. The friction you feel isn't chaos, it's clarity. It's life asking you to let go of what was so you can rise into what could be. It's the moment before the breakthrough. And yes, it can feel lonely. Because growth always creates distance. Between who you were and who you're becoming. Between what you thought you needed and what you now truly want. This discomfort is your invitation. To stop pretending you're okay with a life that no longer reflects your truth. To stop settling for routines that keep you numb. To stop saying yes to things your heart has already said no to. You don't need to have it all figured out to step forward. You just need to stop pretending the old life still fits. When your soul is done with a chapter, no amount of forcing will make it feel right again. That resistance you feel isn't weakness, it's strength. It's your inner knowing refusing to stay where it no longer belongs. The challenge is, we're taught to ignore this voice, to push down the discomfort, to smile through the weight. But deep transformation doesn't begin with a smile. It begins with honesty. It begins when you stop pretending to be comfortable in the cage, when you admit, even silently, that you want more. And once you do, the shift begins. The discomfort becomes direction. The tension becomes movement, and the restlessness becomes fuel. You are not meant to shrink. You are not here to fit in. You are here to grow, to stretch, to expand into the life that's been waiting for your permission. The world around you might not notice it yet, but your spirit does. Your body knows, your mind knows, and your heart has always known. This discomfort is not the end of the road. It's the beginning of alignment. Don't fear it, honor it. Because when your soul starts whispering that you don't belong where you are anymore, it's because where you are is no longer where you're meant to be. Listen closely. The life you've been craving is closer than you think. Sometimes you start letting go without even realizing it. The things that once mattered deeply begin to feel distant. You stop chasing approval that once consumed you. You stop clinging to routines that once gave you a false sense of control. What used to excite you now barely holds your attention. You don't know why, and that's okay. This isn't confusion. It's clarity, unfolding slowly. It's your inner world releasing the weight it no longer wants to carry. Not out of loss, out of readiness. Because deep down, you've already started moving forward. Long before anything changes on the outside, the shift begins within. You don't need a dramatic reason to walk away from something that no longer feeds your growth. Letting go doesn't always come with a loud goodbye. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just a moment of peace where there used to be chaos. A deep breath where there used to be resistance. And that's how you know. You're no longer at war with what doesn't belong to you. You're no longer forcing yourself to stay where your heart isn't. That soft detachment is not weakness. It's power. The power to choose your future over your past. There's something sacred about release. It clears space, and the universe doesn't leave empty spaces unfilled. When you let go of what you've outgrown, you create space for what you're meant to receive. But most people resist this process. They grip harder, fearing emptiness. They confuse letting go with giving up. But this is not surrender to defeat. This is surrender to truth. And the truth is, you're not meant to carry everything forever. Some things were only meant to be with you for a chapter, not your whole story. You're allowed to evolve beyond who you were. You're allowed to want different things than you once did. You're allowed to grow out of dreams that no longer fit. That doesn't make you inconsistent. It makes you human. It makes you alive. It means you're listening to the deeper voice inside, the one that knows when it's time to move on, even when logic tries to hold you back. That voice is your compass, and the more you honor it, the more aligned your life becomes. You don't need permission to release what no longer serves you. You just need to trust that your soul knows what it's doing, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. Trust that walking away from what dims you is the first step toward what will light you up. It might feel unfamiliar, it might feel uncertain, but what's waiting for you on the other side of release is worth every ounce of courage it takes to let go. Letting go is not a sign that something is ending. It's a signal that something better is beginning. Something that matches who you're becoming. Something that doesn't require you to shrink, settle, or hide. Make peace with the falling away. Because what's leaving is making room for what's meant to arrive. As you release what no longer resonates, you begin to crave stillness. You start reaching for simplicity, not because life is easier, but because your spirit is quieter. The noise, the clutter, the endless distractions begin to lose their grip. You no longer chase everything. You begin choosing intentionally. You don't want more. You want meaning. You want peace. And that shift is profound. It's not that the world has changed. It's that your values have. What once entertained you now exhausts you. What once filled your time now feels empty. You're no longer seeking to impress. You're seeking to align. This desire for simplicity is not a step backward. It's the beginning of wholeness. You start to see how much energy you've wasted holding onto chaos. How often you've said yes when your heart whispered no. How long you've let your mind carry burdens that were never yours to hold. And now something inside you wants to strip it all back. The excess. The noise. The pretending. Not because you're lost, but because you're finally ready to find what's real. That inner calling to simplify isn't random. It's wisdom. It's your truth rising to the surface. You begin cleaning not just your space, but your life. You clear your environment not for appearances, but for peace. You stop replying out of guilt. You stop showing up out of obligation. You start honoring what feels light. You start noticing who feels safe. You start choosing what feels true. And in that space, clarity grows, not all at once, but steadily, gently, deeply. It's not about doing less. It's about doing what matters most. It's about finding the courage to stop performing a version of yourself that never felt honest. The old narrative said success was about more money, more attention, more achievement. But your soul isn't interested in more. It's interested in depth. It's interested in presence. It's interested in alignment. That's why you've been feeling the pull. That's why the noise has started to hurt. That's why your body feels tired from chasing what no longer fuels you. Because you were never meant to live distracted. You were never meant to live disconnected. You were meant to live fully, presently, and with purpose. Simplifying is an act of self-respect. It's choosing to protect your energy, to guard your peace, and to invest your time into what actually moves you forward. It's the decision to stop outsourcing your worth to the world around you. Because you've started to remember that peace isn't found in achievement. It's found in alignment. And when your life reflects your values, peace follows. Let this desire to simplify be your sign. You're not quitting. You're choosing better. You're not running away. You're running home to yourself. to clarity, to truth. And in this clarity, your next chapter begins, not with chaos, but with calm, not with more noise, but with more meaning. You're not becoming less, you're becoming clear. And clarity is the beginning of everything. When you begin to align with your truth, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, everything around you begins to respond. You start noticing things you never paid attention to before. People treat you differently. Opportunities show up without force. The air feels lighter. There's a quiet power in you that wasn't there before. Not because you're louder, not because you're doing more, but because you're finally living from a place that's real. That inner alignment radiates outward. It shifts conversations. It changes your posture. It creates space where there was once resistance. You no longer fight to be seen. You simply exist, and that's enough. The need to prove, to chase, to please, it begins to fall away. You don't abandon ambition. You just detach from desperation. You realize your worth isn't tied to how much you accomplish or how many people approve. It's tied to how deeply you live in your values, how honestly you show up for yourself. That's the new standard. That's what you begin to protect. And in that grounded presence, you discover a new kind of confidence. One that doesn't come from noise or validation, but from knowing who you are, what you want, and what you will no longer tolerate. Everything begins with that knowing. When you know your worth, your choices change. You no longer settle for what's almost right. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop waiting for permission to choose yourself. You don't explain your boundaries. You embody them. You don't justify your standards. You hold them. Because your peace is no longer negotiable. Your energy is no longer cheap. You've spent too long undervaluing yourself, and now the shift is irreversible. You're not angry. You're awake. You're not bitter. You're clear. This clarity transforms how you move through the world. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anything, but because you've stopped chasing everything. And in that stillness, in that wholeness, you become a mirror, a reflection of possibility for others. Your healing becomes permission. Your clarity becomes light. And your presence becomes proof that transformation isn't just possible, it's powerful. It's within reach for anyone willing to do the inner work. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be small. It's about stripping back the noise until only the truth remains. And once that truth becomes your compass, your path becomes clear. You stop second-guessing every step. You stop outsourcing your decisions. You trust your pace, your process, your path. Because now, your direction comes from within, not from fear, not from pressure, but from purpose. This energy shift is not temporary. It's foundational. It's the beginning of a new era, one where you no longer apologize for taking up space, one where your life is built from the inside out. Keep moving in this energy. Keep trusting this version of you. Because once you choose alignment, life begins to respond in ways that feel like miracles. And none of it is luck. It's who you've become. When your inner world becomes solid, your outer world starts to reflect it. You no longer chase peace. You create it. You no longer beg for love. You embody it. You no longer seek direction. You become the guide. What once overwhelmed you now feels manageable. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. You stopped running from discomfort. You started listening to it. You stopped ignoring your intuition. You started honoring it. And in that shift, everything changed. Not all at once, but deeply, quietly, permanently. You started showing up for yourself in ways no one ever taught you. You started keeping promises to yourself that no one else could see. And those invisible wins, they became the foundation for everything visible that followed. You begin to realize that the change you were waiting for was never about the world. It was always about you, your mindset, your focus, your energy. Life responds to who you are, not just what you want. When you become aligned, life mirrors that alignment. New doors open, old patterns dissolve. People enter your life who speak your language. Challenges arise, but they no longer undo you. You face them with resilience, because you know your center, you know your worth. And when you know your worth, life stops being a battle and starts becoming a journey. You feel a pull toward things that elevate you. Words, actions, habits, environments. You protect your space not from fear but from intention. You understand that not everything deserves access to your energy. You don't entertain drama because your peace costs too much. You don't engage in self-doubt because your clarity is earned. This is what growth looks like. Not perfection, not control, just consistent alignment. Choosing again and again to stay true to what matters. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. There's power in that decision. The power to rise even when the world tells you to stay the same. The power to walk away even when your heart is afraid. The power to begin again even when you failed before. Because now you understand something deeper. Growth isn't loud. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it's quiet choices made in private. Sometimes it's simply refusing to betray yourself one more time. That's how real change happens, not through the big moments, but through the steady ones. The small shifts, the quiet yes, the gentle no. You've come too far to shrink back. You've seen too much to unsee your worth. The life you're stepping into is not the result of chance. It's the result of every time you showed up, every time you chose growth over comfort, clarity over confusion, truth over fear. You are not who you were. You are becoming something more. And that becoming, it's not an accident. It's a response, a reflection of the work you've done, the choices you've made, and the strength you've earned. Keep going. The shift you feel is real, and it's only the beginning. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. And that shift, though invisible to many, changes everything. You stop hoping the world will notice your worth and start living in a way that proves you already have. You stop handing your power to circumstances and start reclaiming it through decisions. You realize that the breakthrough isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens within you. And now, you are ready to meet life with open eyes, with steady hands, with a heart that no longer doubts its own voice. Because the version of you that questioned your place is no longer leading. The version of you rising now is bold, grounded, and unshakable. There is a quiet confidence that comes when you finally understand that you are the source, not the world around you, not the opinions of others, not the timeline you once thought you had to follow. You are the creator, not the victim. You are the decider, not the bystander. This is the moment you begin walking in your own direction, not because someone gave you permission, but because you stop needing it. The moment you stop apologizing for your fire. The moment you stop explaining your healing. The moment you accept that your journey will never make perfect sense to others and still choose to take each step with intention and trust. You don't need certainty to move forward. You need courage. You don't need every detail to be figured out. You just need a reason to begin. And that reason lives inside you. It has always lived inside you. Every time you felt the pull to change, to rise, to grow, it was that reason trying to speak. You are not broken. You are breaking free. And what looks like chaos is often the clearing of what no longer belongs. What feels like discomfort is often the birth of something real. Let it unfold. Let it shape you. Let it teach you the strength of standing fully in who you are, even when nothing around you makes sense. This is what transformation looks like. Not always beautiful, not always clean, but always worth it. Because it brings you back to your truth. It strips away what's false. It sharpens your focus. It deepens your purpose. And it reminds you that the life you want isn't waiting on the outside. It's waiting for you to believe, to act, to choose differently. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. You are not here to fit into a life that dims your spirit. You are here to build one that reflects your essence, one step at a time, one choice at a time. No rush, no pressure, just presence, just truth, just the quiet knowing that everything is changing, because you are changing. And from that inner shift, a new reality begins to form, one rooted in authenticity, powered by self-trust, and guided by the version of you that no longer settles. Everything you've been through has brought you here, not to break you, but to build you. Every delay taught you patience. Every rejection showed you resilience. Every heartbreak cracked you open just enough for the truth to find its way in. And now, you're standing at the edge of something you can feel but can't yet explain. That's not fear, that's recognition. That's your soul sensing what's next. Because deep down you know, you didn't come this far to stay the same. You didn't endure all that growth to remain small. You didn't learn all these lessons to keep repeating the old patterns. This moment isn't random, it's a signal. Something inside you has shifted and now life is moving to meet you there. You start seeing the difference between what drains you and what fuels you. You feel the weight of your old self starting to fall away. Not because you forced it, but because it no longer fits. The thoughts, the habits, the beliefs, they don't align with who you're becoming. And you can feel it. That internal tension isn't something to fear, it's transformation in motion. It's the stretching of identity, the shedding of limits, the revealing of strength you didn't know you had. And that discomfort, it means you're not numb anymore. It means you're awake, alive, aware. Every time you choose presence over distraction, you reconnect with your power. Every time you choose truth over approval, you return to your center. You stop needing things to look perfect. You stop needing life to follow a script. Because now you understand that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your process. Trust that no matter what unfolds, you are equipped to face it, because you've proven it, time and time again. You've faced the unknown and survived. You've walked through storms and come out stronger. And now you're not afraid of change. You're ready for it. The signs are already here. The weight you've carried is starting to lift. The clarity you craved is slowly arriving. The strength you were searching for, you're standing in it. Not because life got easier, but because you got intentional. You stopped waiting for permission to live fully. You started giving yourself the green light to evolve. And with every aligned action, you built momentum. Quietly, steadily, powerfully. The life you've imagined isn't a fantasy. It's a reflection of the energy you've begun to embody. And that energy is calling in new beginnings. Not by force, but by frequency. This is not the end of something familiar. It's the beginning of something real. The struggle taught you what matters. The silence showed you your voice. The waiting shaped your wisdom. Now you rise, not with noise, but with certainty. Because now, you remember who you are. And from that remembering, everything changes. This is the moment your future starts to feel like home. Not because you arrived, but because you finally decided you're no longer afraid to become. You're beginning to realize that the life you once feared was out of reach is now something you're stepping into with open hands. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've stopped waiting for perfect to begin. You stopped holding your breath, waiting for the right moment, the right sign, the right conditions. You understand now that clarity comes from action, not overthinking. Confidence is built through repetition, not silence. And alignment isn't a destination, it's a commitment. Every time you choose what's right for your soul over what's easy for your ego, you step deeper into your own power. You're not chasing the future anymore. You're building it, moment by moment, choice by choice. You've started to honor the difference between who you were conditioned to be and who you actually are. And that separation, that awareness, is the beginning of liberation. You're no longer living to keep others comfortable. You're no longer bending just to be accepted. You've learned that shrinking yourself serves no one. You've seen how dimming your light doesn't protect you, it suffocates you. So now you rise. You speak differently. You walk differently. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Because you finally understand that authenticity is your superpower, and living in your truth is not a luxury, it's a responsibility. There's a shift that happens when you stop trying to fix what was never broken. When you stop carrying the weight of expectations that were never yours to begin with. You begin to feel light, not because life becomes easy, but because your spirit is no longer dragging the past behind it. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not trying to chase validation. You're simply being, fully and freely. And that state of being, it opens doors. It changes conversations. It creates connections that are rooted in truth, not performance. You're not trying to fit in anymore. You're here to stand out, not loudly, but unapologetically. Growth doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like resting instead of grinding, like saying no instead of saying yes, like walking away from what drains you even if it once made you feel important. And in those small, quiet decisions, you're reclaiming yourself. You're choosing alignment over attachment. You're choosing peace over pleasing. And you're beginning to trust that what is meant for you will not require you to abandon who you are to have it. You've stopped fearing change because you've learned that change is proof that you're alive. It means you're evolving. It means your spirit is stretching. You're not who you used to be, and that's a good thing. You're not here to repeat the past. You're here to rise beyond it. And every time you take a step in truth, every time you choose self-respect, you're creating a life that mirrors the strength within you. You've outgrown fear. You've outgrown doubt. And now, you walk with the quiet power of someone who knows life isn't happening to you. It's rising through you. You no longer need to be convinced of your power. You felt it. In the quiet moments when you chose peace over chaos. In the silent battles you won with no applause, no recognition, just inner resolve. You've learned that strength isn't about resistance. It's about surrendering to your truth and standing in it without fear. You've watched the old version of you dissolve, not with regret but with reverence. Because now you understand that letting go is not a loss. It's an act of love, a love for who you're becoming, a love for the life that's unfolding in alignment with your highest self. There is no turning back. There is no shrinking down. You are expanding, because your soul no longer fits inside the limits you once accepted. You feel it in your body, that deep knowing that you're ready to stop asking for permission to live fully, ready to stop playing roles that silence your voice. You don't need validation when you walk in truth. You don't need agreement when your heart is clear. You've given too much time to doubt, to delay, to the illusion that you had to earn your worth. Now, you know better. Worth isn't earned, it's remembered, it's claimed. And when you finally remember who you are, life shifts. Not because the world changes, but because your energy changes. And that energy becomes your message. Not through words, but through presence. Through the way you carry yourself. Through the decisions you make when no one is watching. This is what transformation looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, but powerful. Every boundary you set, every habit you break, every time you honor your intuition, you're rewriting the script. You're stepping out of survival mode and into conscious creation. You're not reacting anymore. You're choosing. With clarity, with courage, with compassion for the parts of you that didn't know how before. And that compassion becomes fuel, not for staying stuck, but for moving forward with intention. You're no longer led by fear. You're led by vision, not just of what you want, but of who you're becoming. The old you would have second-guessed this moment, would have hesitated, would have waited for a sign, a signal, some external proof. But not this time. This time you're trusting the feeling, the pull, the expansion. This time you're listening to the voice that says you're ready. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. You don't need all the answers to begin. You just need to decide you're done dimming your light, that you're done carrying what was never yours, that you're done pretending you're not built for more. Because you are. Every breath you take in this awareness grounds you deeper. Every step forward is a declaration: I'm not hiding, I'm not settling, I'm not waiting. I'm here to grow, to rise, to embody the life that's been calling me for so long. And now that I've heard it, I won't turn back. I'll move forward, not with force, but with purpose. You're beginning to feel the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's not a gap of fear, it's a stretch of growth. Growth that doesn't ask for permission. Growth that no longer waits for the world to catch up to your light. You've spent enough time apologizing for your depth, for your clarity, for your need to move differently. But now, your movements carry intention. You're no longer acting out of habit, you're choosing from awareness. And that shift is everything. It changes how you speak to yourself. It changes how you respond to the world. Because you've finally accepted that your evolution is not too much. It's necessary. It's sacred. And it's right on time. You've realized that staying in the familiar just to feel safe is the slowest form of self-abandonment. So you've stopped trying to make the old places fit your new vision. You're done explaining your decisions to those committed to misunderstanding your growth. You've tasted the peace that comes from alignment, and now anything less feels heavy. Your heart no longer negotiates with fear. It listens to truth. And truth, no matter how uncomfortable, always sets you free. So you lean into the discomfort, not because you enjoy it, but because you know it leads to something greater. And that's how you know your life is changing. You no longer crave ease, you crave meaning. You no longer seek escape, you seek expansion. You feel your energy returning to you, not because someone gave it back, but because you stopped giving it away. You stopped over-explaining, over-proving, over-performing. You remembered that your presence is enough, that your peace is powerful, that your boundaries are not a wall, they're a declaration of self-respect, and that declaration echoes. It touches every decision, every interaction, every room you walk into. You don't need to say much. Your energy speaks first. It says, I know who I am, I know where I'm going, and I know what I no longer accept. This is what reclaiming your life looks like. It's quiet, it's consistent, it's rooted. It doesn't seek validation because it doesn't need it. And from that place of wholeness, life begins to respond. Not because you begged for better, but because you became better. Better boundaries, better habits, better thoughts, better standards. Not out of bitterness, but from deep love. For yourself, for your future, for your freedom. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not trying to outrun your past. You're simply rising naturally, powerfully. Because you've outgrown anything that dims your light. You don't need to rush. You don't need to force. You're aligned now. And that alignment creates flow. The resistance is dissolving. The confusion is clearing. The fog is lifting. Because you chose yourself. Not once, not twice, but every single day. And that choice is the most powerful act of change. This is what readiness feels like. Not loud, not frantic, just clear, grounded, and unstoppable. There's a quiet revolution happening inside of you. Not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that shifts everything. You're not interested in surface-level change anymore. You're not here to rearrange pieces of a life that no longer fits. You're here to build something new, from the inside out, with intention, with integrity, with vision. And the more you choose yourself, the more the noise fades. The pressure to please, the fear of judgment, the urge to prove, it all loses its grip. Because when you anchor into your truth, external opinions become weightless. You no longer trade authenticity for approval. You no longer dilute your message to be digestible. You say what needs to be said. You do what needs to be done. And you let your life speak for itself. You've learned that your energy is your compass, that the way you feel is information, not something to ignore or suppress. When your body tightens, you listen. When your spirit expands, you move. You've stopped overriding your intuition for comfort. You've stopped negotiating your values for connection. You don't chase energy that drains you anymore. You don't shrink to keep the peace. Your peace is no longer negotiable. Your vision is no longer blurred by the need to fit in. You've cleared the fog, not by forcing clarity, but by clearing the clutter. And now, what remains is pure, direct, undeniable. You feel it when you wake up, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. The quiet knowing that you're exactly where you need to be, becoming exactly who you're meant to become. You no longer need dramatic signs to trust the process. The process is already revealing itself through your courage, through your decisions, through the standards you've raised without explanation. You've stopped chasing timelines and started trusting alignment. You know that what's meant for you will feel peaceful, not pressured. Clear, not chaotic. Rooted, not rushed. Your patience is no longer passive. It's powerful. It's grounded in the understanding that great things take time to grow, and you're no longer rushing a timeline that was never yours. You've stopped measuring your progress by comparison. You've stopped confusing motion with meaning. Your steps may be slow, but they're sacred. Every small act of self-respect, every quiet boundary, every moment of rest, it all counts. It all adds up. You've become a living reminder that transformation isn't about perfection. It's about alignment, about showing up, about choosing differently even when it's hard. You've realized that fear is loud, but truth is steady. And when you stop feeding fear, truth becomes easier to hear. And the truth is, you were never broken. You were only buried under expectations, conditioning, and self-doubt. But now, you're rising. Not into someone new, but into who you've always been. Beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the fear. You're not waiting for your life to change anymore. You are the change. And the future you once dreamed of is now responding to your every move. You are no longer trying to be everything for everyone. You've discovered the deep peace that comes from being everything for yourself. Not from ego, but from alignment. Not from pride, but from healing. You've given so much of your energy away in the past, explaining yourself, justifying your needs, softening your truth so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But that season is done. Now, you honor what you feel. You respect what you need. You no longer silence your voice just to keep someone else's approval. You've come too far to betray yourself again, and that choice, to finally stand in your own presence, is the beginning of a life that reflects your worth instead of questioning it. It's no longer about doing more. It's about doing what matters. The noise that once pulled you in all directions now fades behind the clarity you've cultivated within. You've realized that saying no isn't selfish, it's sacred. It's a boundary that protects your energy, your peace, your future. You've learned that not every opportunity is aligned. Not every invitation is meant for your growth. You no longer chase what doesn't feel right. You no longer hold on to what makes you doubt yourself. You've made space for better by finally releasing what you once clung to out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear of change. But now, that fear no longer decides for you. Faith does. You've started to feel it. How life responds when you respond to yourself. When you no longer avoid the mirror. When you no longer numb the discomfort. When you choose presence over distraction. You're not escaping anymore. You're facing. You're staying. You're showing up for the messy, beautiful work of becoming. And that work isn't always visible. It's in the quiet shifts. The thoughts you no longer entertain. The patterns you no longer repeat. The energy you no longer tolerate. These are the signs of real change. Not loud, not dramatic, just true. You've realized your worth isn't proven through productivity. Your value isn't determined by what you accomplish. You are already enough, right here, in this moment, even as you evolve. And that truth allows you to release the pressure. To stop rushing, to stop performing, to slow down, and trust the deeper rhythm of your life. Growth isn't always fast. Healing isn't always obvious. But both are happening. Day by day, decision by decision, breath by breath. And now you walk differently, with quiet confidence, with calm power. You don't need to convince anyone of your progress. You feel it. In your clarity, in your energy, in the way you no longer beg for what you once settled for. You have stepped into a new frequency. A frequency that attracts what aligns and repels what no longer serves. And because you've chosen yourself, everything around you begins to reflect that choice. You're not just changing your life. You're claiming the one that's been waiting for your courage to rise. You're beginning to feel the difference between control and trust. You're no longer gripping so tightly to outcomes you once thought had to happen a certain way. You've learned that real power is not found in force. It's found in surrender. Not in giving up, but in letting go of the illusion that you must manipulate everything to feel safe. You've started to trust that what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased, that your value doesn't need to be proven, that your timing doesn't need to match anyone else's to be valid. And in that trust, something profound is growing. Peace. A kind of inner peace that doesn't need external evidence to feel real. This peace doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence. From being fully here, fully now, fully in tune with the moment in front of you. You've stopped waiting for the right conditions to begin. You've stopped postponing your joy. You no longer say I'll be happy when. You understand that every day is your life, not a rehearsal for something better. You don't need the outside world to applaud your progress when your soul already knows how far you've come. You're no longer driven by scarcity. You've tasted the power of enough effort, enough truth, enough of your own light to guide the way forward without needing permission. And now you've started to realize something deeper, that the people who are meant to walk with you on this path don't need convincing. They feel your shift. They see your energy change, even in silence. You don't have to explain the boundaries you've set. You don't have to justify the standards you've raised. Those who are ready for the next version of you will meet you there, and those who resist your growth are simply showing you where their chapter ends. You no longer fear letting go. You honor the lesson, bless the memory, and move forward with grace. Growth is no longer an idea, it's an embodiment. You speak differently, not to sound better, but because your thoughts have changed. You walk differently, not to impress, but because you carry less weight. You breathe differently, not because life got easier, but because you've made space to receive it. Your transformation is not loud, but it is undeniable, and it's not meant to make you superior. It's meant to set you free, free from patterns, free from pressure, free from everything that made you question your worth in the first place. You're not waiting to become someone else. You're remembering who you are, underneath the fear, beyond the expectations, before the world told you who you had to be. And now that you've begun to return to that truth, you move with a kind of calm certainty. Life is no longer happening to you, it's unfolding through you, and everything that felt like a delay was only preparing you to finally step into this moment, fully aware, deeply grounded, and unshakably ready. You're no longer distracted by what doesn't matter. Your mind has grown quieter, not because the noise has disappeared, but because your focus has sharpened. You now see through the surface. You feel when something aligns and when it doesn't. You no longer force connections, and you've stopped clinging to what makes your spirit shrink. You've learned the difference between what drains you and what fuels you. You've stopped mistaking comfort for peace. What once felt safe now feels suffocating. Because you've changed, and in that change you've discovered clarity. That clarity is no accident. It's a product of courage. The courage to finally face what you used to avoid. The courage to choose discomfort now for a better life later. The courage to believe there's more, and to take the first step even before it makes sense. You've stopped measuring your life by how much you've done. You now ask yourself how deeply you've lived. Not how busy you've been, but how present. Not how much you've achieved, but how aligned you've become. You've stopped numbing your heart just to get through the day. Now, you listen to it, you trust it. And that trust is starting to rewire everything. You no longer chase emotions outside yourself because you've learned to generate them from within. Gratitude, peace, confidence. You've started to build your emotional home on a foundation that cannot be shaken. That strength is not accidental. It's earned. Quietly, daily, relentlessly, you've reached a place where you no longer need chaos to feel alive. You've learned that peace isn't boring. It's powerful. It's the signal that your nervous system is healing. That your identity is no longer tied to crisis. That you don't need to be fighting something to feel like you're progressing. You now understand that stillness is not a void. It's preparation. It's realignment. It's the space where everything begins to click. And in that space, your intuition speaks louder. Your values rise to the surface. You stop trying to fix everything, and instead start choosing what deserves your energy. That choice alone reshapes your entire life. You've begun to lead yourself from a deeper place. You no longer rely on external motivation. You've tapped into something more permanent, internal commitment. You show up because it's who you are, not because someone's watching. You stay consistent, not because it's easy, but because you've tasted what inconsistency costs you. You move forward, not because the road is always clear, but because the mission is. And when the mission is clear, excuses fade. Distractions lose their grip. Fear becomes fuel. You understand now that transformation isn't one big leap. It's 1,000 small choices. And you're making them every day, quietly, powerfully, without needing recognition. This is your shift. This is the momentum you've built from the inside out. You don't need signs anymore. You've become the evidence. You've chosen to grow. And now life is responding. Not by chance, by design. You've stepped into alignment, and now your life begins to reflect it. Not in sudden miracles or dramatic shifts, but in the small, consistent confirmations that you are on the right path. You wake up with a deeper calm. You move through the day with steadier breath. The things that once triggered anxiety no longer hold power over you. You see them, acknowledge them, and move beyond them. This is strength. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. You've stopped looking for validation in chaos and started finding it in your own stability. That shift changes everything. Because when your inner world is in order, the outer world adjusts. You no longer need life to be perfect to feel good. You've found a rhythm within yourself, and that rhythm guides you forward. You're no longer reactive. You're intentional. You pause before responding. You choose your words with care. You guard your energy with precision. Not because you're trying to control everything, but because you understand the cost of letting just anything into your space. Your peace has become too valuable to trade for temporary approval. You've begun to realize that maturity isn't just about age, it's about ownership. You take ownership of your choices, your emotions, your direction. You don't blame the world for what you haven't built. You recognize that your life is a mirror, and every reflection you see begins with you. This level of awareness isn't easy, but it's freeing. You're no longer a passenger, you've become the driver, and now the road ahead feels like possibility, not pressure. Your confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's in the way you walk into silence and don't rush to fill it. It's in the way you say no without guilt and yes without fear. It's in the way you trust your process, even when no one claps for it. That kind of confidence comes from knowing your worth doesn't depend on your performance. You are enough, even while becoming more. You are worthy, even while growing. You are whole, even as you evolve. And when that truth settles into your spirit, you stop proving and start living. You've stopped waiting for signs to believe. You've stopped needing permission to begin. You've learned that sometimes the confirmation doesn't come before the action. It comes after. It's only once you start moving that clarity appears. So now, you move, even when it's hard, even when it's slow. Because you've learned that growth doesn't always look like winning. It often looks like trying again, and again, until one day, it just clicks. But you won't wait for that day to believe in yourself. You believe now, fully, deeply, without conditions. Everything that once felt far away is now being drawn to the version of you who no longer doubts. Because belief is magnetic. It pulls opportunities. It attracts the right people. It shifts outcomes. Not by force, but by energy. And now, your energy is undeniable. You are no longer chasing outcomes. You are embodying alignment. You've realized that the goal was never just to get more, but to become more. More grounded, more aware, more whole. The version of you that once settled has now become the version that chooses. You don't settle for less, not out of pride, but out of clarity. You finally understand what you're worth. Not because someone told you, but because you've seen it for yourself, in the way you rise, in the way you protect your energy, in the way you've stopped abandoning yourself just to be accepted. That inner standard is not arrogance, it's evolution. You've stepped into a season where your energy speaks louder than your words, where your boundaries are rooted, not in fear, but in love, for yourself and for the life you're building. Every decision you make now carries weight, not because it's heavy, but because it's intentional. You don't follow emotion blindly. You let emotion speak, but you don't let it steer. You've grown past impulsive reactions and into thoughtful response. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. You've started living from the inside out. You listen to your inner signals before the outer noise. You've detached from urgency, from the pressure to prove, from the need to keep up, because you've realized that peace is progress too. You're no longer addicted to momentum that leads nowhere. You now move with purpose, not pressure. And that shift, though subtle, is powerful. Because when you move with purpose, you begin to attract everything that aligns with your next level. You feel it. The way life begins to support you when you stop resisting who you are. You're no longer asking for permission to be powerful. You're owning it. Quietly, completely, without apology. You don't shrink yourself to keep others comfortable. You don't downplay your voice to avoid discomfort. You speak truth, even if it trembles. You choose alignment, even when it's not easy. And that consistency is forming the foundation of a new identity, one built on self-respect, not self-doubt. You now understand that the people who are meant to walk with you will rise to meet you. You don't chase connections. You elevate your frequency and allow what matches it to arrive naturally. This is what real change feels like. Subtle shifts that create irreversible transformation. It's no longer about waiting for the perfect timing. It's about realizing the timing is made perfect by your decision to begin. You've stopped waiting to feel ready. You've started honoring the power of showing up anyway. That is where everything begins to change. Not when circumstances shift, but when your identity does. When your story about yourself evolves. When you stop repeating your past and start creating your future. Moment by moment, choice by choice. You are no longer who you used to be. And you don't need to be. Because who you're becoming is already enough. Already capable. Already aligned. Your life is responding. Not because of luck, Because of you.